Yeah.
What the hell you had with?
Listen, if you really know the background of who Jay Wright is, I'm really a criminal trying not to be one. But then my mom started feeling some kind of way because her husband's dad was in the ICU, and then her aunt is probably about to die. Both of them, like I think all three of them are probably about to actually die. So my mom was doing bad, so I stayed. But I've been telling her, like, my PTSD is bad. I need to go back home.
On Mother's Day, inside his own mother's house, a 20-year-old woman named Wilana Bibbs was shot once in the back and later pronounced dead at the scene. When police asked what happened, the man responsible didn't take the blame. Rather than explaining what happened, Wright focused on everything around him: his mental state, the tension in the house, and the people he believed were against him. So the question becomes, how does a man with this much to lose throw it all away in his mother's home on Mother's Day and then try to explain it all away? Stay right here because everything you're about to see is documented and sourced. This is Justin Wright, a multi-platinum music producer from Atlanta who worked with names like Bow Wow, Timbaland, and Cash Doll, building a reputation and a business in the industry.
Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T.
What's your birthday?
6/10/89.
And you got a phone number?
My phone is not on right now.
If I needed to get a hold of you, is there any number that's working right now? Anything like that?
I was gonna get another phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. What's an address for you, Justin?
35 Atlanta. And that's you. Mm-hmm.
Let's start with who Justin Wright actually was, because if you're expecting a street rapper with a criminal past, you would be wrong. Wright was a legitimate, behind-the-scenes music industry powerhouse. He went professionally by the name Jay Wright, and he founded a company called Camp Entertainment Worldwide. His credits included collaborations with some of the biggest names in hip-hop and R&B: Bow Wow, Timbaland, and Cash Doll, among others. This was not a man who was unknown or struggling. This was a man with connections, with credibility in the industry, and with real professional success under his belt. He was born around 1989 to 1990, making him 31 years old at the time of his arrest. He lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and by all public accounts, he was someone building something serious in the music business. That contrast between his professional success and what happened that day is central to understanding the case. Now let's talk about Wilana S. Bibbs. Wilana Bibbs was 20 years old, originally from Durham, North Carolina, and had recently moved to Atlanta to pursue a career in music. She was an aspiring singer. Her family described her as someone with a magnetic personality and a smile that lit up every room she walked into. Wilana and Justin had only been dating for a few months when all of this happened, and according to her family, it was not a healthy relationship from the start. According to her family, the relationship was toxic and controlling. Her mother, Cassandra Bibbs, said Wright showed signs of jealousy, particularly around the close bond between Wilana and Cassandra herself. That detail will matter a lot once we get into the interrogation footage. But before we get there, you need to understand how this 20-year-old woman ended up 900 miles from home, at her mother's house on Mother's Day. In late April of 2021, Wright and Bibbs traveled together from Atlanta to Davenport, Iowa. The stated reason for the trip was a family birthday party at Wright's mother's home on the 1500 block of Calvin Street. But the trip extended longer than planned due to family hospitalizations that kept them in Iowa beyond the original schedule. By the time Mother's Day weekend arrived, they were still at the house in Davenport, still together. And here is where the morning of May 9th becomes almost unbearably tragic in hindsight. That morning, Wilana texted her mother, Cassandra. The message read, "Hey Mom, happy Mother's Day. I love you and appreciate you for everything you do. Love, but call me." She then called her mother 4 times back to back. Those calls went unanswered. That message, followed by 4 missed calls, was the last time Wilana Bibbs ever reached her mother. At approximately 1:25 in the afternoon, Davenport police responded to an open-line 911 call at the Calvin Street home. What they found when they arrived was Willana Bibbs, shot once in the back. The bullet had struck her spine, her heart, and her liver. She was pronounced dead at the scene by Davenport fire and medic responders. Wright was arrested that same day, and the arrest affidavit alleged that he acted deliberately and with premeditation. She had traveled to Iowa with him. She had been in his mother's home.
She was like, oh, we could go in the bathroom and that. So like even that, I didn't even pursue any of that because I'm so afraid. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm so afraid of everything right now, and it sucks because I'm not that type of person.
Right.
Like even when I've been going out, like to like stores and stuff here, I've been making my mom go with me because I'm afraid. Like I'm just afraid. I don't want to be anywhere by myself, and that's why even when I'm like home, like I Instacart and stuff like that for food because I don't want to be out with.
Justin Wright was placed under arrest the same day as the shooting. On June 24, 2021, he entered a not guilty plea through his attorney, Derek Jones. But before any of that court process got moving, law enforcement sat him down for an interrogation, and the footage from that session has been widely circulated and offers insight to his statements to investigators. From the jump, Wright does not come across as someone who just committed a crime and is trying to hide it in the conventional sense. He comes across as someone who had a very specific story prepared, one where he is the real victim and where the events unfolded around him rather than because of him. Wright told detectives he suffered from severe PTSD. He claimed this stemmed from a prior robbery in Atlanta that he believed had been arranged by jealous members of his own family, his siblings specifically. He said he was off his medication, that he was hearing voices, and that he was in a state of heightened paranoia during the family visit. And here is where the blame his mom angle starts to take shape, not because he explicitly said his mother caused this, but because he repeatedly referenced telling his mother about the state of his mental health right before this trip. He frames the entire visit to Davenport as something he had warned her about. Wright told investigators he was dealing with severe PTSD. He said he was off his medication, hearing voices, and becoming increasingly paranoid during the trip. According to him, he had warned his mother that his mental state was getting worse before they even arrived in Iowa.
So did you do that?
No, I ended up like driving around, like I drove in a circle for a second, and my PTSD like was really acting up, and I didn't want to go anywhere by myself, so I came back.
But he did not stop at the PTSD claim. He went deeper. He talked about a long history of tension between himself and his family, specifically pointing to his brother and sister as people who resented his success in the music industry.
I haven't spoken to him. The people that I first met in Atlanta, I got robbed and almost killed in Atlanta. That's one of the reasons for my PTSD.
Right.
My brother set it up because him and my sister, they don't like my success.
Okay.
So like I have a really nice condo downtown Atlanta. Like I've always had nice cars and jewelry, and my business is going well. So they're not happy about it.
He also brought up tensions involving associates of Willana's, referencing her family's associates as people who were supposedly plotting against him. He mentioned that his own mother had at one point bought Willana a plane ticket, framing that as part of a broader web of entanglements he was trapped inside. In the extended section of the interrogation, he talked about hearing voices, discussed his medication, which he said included THC oil and sleeping pills, and described himself as someone who could not trust the people around him because he believed plots were being formed against him inside the very house he was sitting in. His account of that day was that he had only come to the house briefly to clean his car. He said he was watching television with his young daughter, Jayla, and that he had no knowledge of what happened to Alana. In his version of events, he was essentially a bystander, a man who was mentally unraveling, surrounded by family conflict, and wrongly accused. Whether you find his story credible or not, the jury did not. And it's worth pausing on that for a second, because Wright is not a simple man. He built a music business. He knows how to construct a narrative. The interrogation does not come across as confusion, but rather as a structured attempt to explain events from his perspective. Willana Bibbs was shot in the back. That detail became a key point during the prosecution's case. When you were shot in the back, you were not attacking someone, you were running away from them. That is the detail the prosecution leaned on. That is the detail the jury remembered. A Scott County jury convicted Justin Wright of first-degree premeditated murder on April 10, 2023, after a trial that had run from late May of that year through the verdict date. A guilty verdict for first-degree murder in Iowa is not like a conviction in some states where sentencing comes with a range. In Iowa, first-degree murder carries a mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. There is no negotiation. The jury's verdict meant one thing and one thing only: Justin Wright would never be a free man again. The trial ran before Judge Tamara Roberts in Scott County District Court. Wright had waived his preliminary hearing. He had maintained his not guilty plea throughout, and when the jury came back, after hearing all of the evidence the prosecution had assembled, enough to support a premeditation finding, they returned a verdict of first-degree murder after reviewing the evidence presented at trial. Sentencing was set for June 14, 2023. On sentencing day, the courtroom included Walana's family, and the most powerful voice in that room belonged to her father, Thomas Bibbs. Standing before the court, Thomas Bibbs delivered a victim impact statement that cut through everything and landed on a single, devastating detail. He said Wright killed his daughter over $70. That was it. That was the motive. Over $70. Over $70. Prosecutors argued that the motive was a dispute over $70, a belief also echoed by the victim's family. Not an elaborate conspiracy, not a breakdown nobody saw coming. A dispute. A 20-year-old woman's life taken over less than $100. Justin Wright said nothing at sentencing. He stood there while the judge imposed the mandatory life sentence and gave no statement, no apology, no acknowledgement of any kind. His mother was present in the courtroom. After he was led away, she asked the deputies if she could say goodbye to her son. The deputies denied the request. Wright did not accept the verdict quietly. Just 5 days after sentencing, on June 19, 2023, he filed an appeal with the Iowa Supreme Court, docketed with the Iowa Court of Appeals under case number 230968. That appeal was heard and ultimately dismissed on January 9, 2025. That dismissal is the final chapter of this legal story. There is no pending case. There is no new trial. Justin Wright is serving life without parole, and every legal avenue available to him has been closed. While the legal process wound through the courts, Cassandra Bibbs did not go silent. She gave interviews to local Iowa outlets, including KWQC, speaking publicly about domestic violence awareness and about her daughter. She talked about the red flags in the relationship. She talked about the warning signs that were visible in hindsight but perhaps were not fully recognized in the moment for what they were. And she talked about that Mother's Day morning text, the one that said, "Hey Mom, happy Mother's Day. I love you and appreciate you for everything you do. Love, but call me." The one followed by 4 unanswered calls. Cassandra Bibbs did not get to answer those calls. She spent Mother's Day 2021 as the mother of a murder victim instead of the mother of a 20-year-old daughter who was still chasing her dream.
Please help me. It's getting bad. Please help me. Please help me.
Let me have you sign this before
Please,
you...
I'm hearing the craziest shit in my head right now.
What's
Please
it
help
saying?
me. I don't want to tell you because you're going to try to put me in a hospital or something.
No, I'm not the hospital police. I'm just here to try to get you, and then initial right here, hon, I'm sorry. Initial and initial on those lines, please.
But that raises a harder question. One that doesn't just sit with this case, but with a lot of cases like it. How many times did those warning signs actually show up and get ignored? Not because people don't care, but because they don't recognize what they're looking at until it's already too late. Control doesn't always look like control at first. It can look like attention, like protection, like someone who just cares a lot. Jealousy gets reframed as love. Isolation gets reframed as loyalty. And slowly, the person at the center of it all becomes harder and harder to reach. By the time family notices something is off, the situation is already complicated. There's emotional dependency, there's distance, and sometimes there's fear. In Walana's case, her family did notice things weren't right. They described the relationship as controlling. They saw the tension. They felt the shift. But awareness alone isn't always enough to stop what's already in motion.
That's why I've been telling my mom, it's too much, Mom. I feel like I'm about to break. It's too much. It's too much.
So, Justin, and I know this is probably one of the most difficult times you've had ever.
This is the most difficult. I'm not even going to lie to you.
Now we need to figure out how Na ended up being shot inside of your mom's house.
I just pray to God her and my mom didn't get into it.
Because here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't leave situations just because they're unhealthy. They leave when they're ready, or when something forces the situation to break. And sometimes that break comes in the worst possible way. Now step back and look at the timeline again. A young woman moves nearly 1,000 miles away from home. She's chasing a dream. She's in a new city, new environment, new relationship. And the person she's relying on the most is also the person her family is most concerned about. That's a dangerous dynamic because it creates a kind of emotional bottleneck where one person becomes your access point to everything: housing, connections, opportunities, stability. And when that person becomes unstable, everything around them starts to collapse with it. Then there's Wright himself.
Kind of, we were just talking about the whole Ann thing and how Ann was back in the hospital at the time. And I was just telling her how I felt about things. She was telling me how she felt about things, and that was one of the things that we were cool with. We could argue, say we hate each other, all of that. We wish we never met each other, and then we could have a friend conversation. I feel like even with some of my guy friends, we kind of do that. We might yell at each other and blow up, and then.
Because if you strip away the headlines and look at the structure of his defense, it's built on something you see often in interrogation psychology: externalization of responsibility. Nothing is directly his fault. It's his mental health, it's his family, it's jealousy, it's conspiracies, it's tension in the house, it's voices, it's medication. Everything becomes a factor, except a clear acknowledgement of choice. And not distinction matters. Because the legal system, especially in a case like first-degree murder, is not just asking what happened. It's asking, did you decide to do it? Premeditation doesn't require weeks of planning. It can be formed in minutes, sometimes seconds. But once a jury believes that decision was made, everything else becomes secondary. And then there's that one detail, the one the prosecution anchored everything around. She was shot in the back. That single fact collapses a lot of alternative narratives. It contradicts self-defense. It contradicts immediate threat. It suggests movement away, not toward. And juries tend to hold on to details like that because they're simple, they're visual, and they're hard to explain away. Now add the alleged motive, $70. Whether that number tells the full story or not, it doesn't actually need to, because motive in court isn't about making the act make sense. It's about giving the jury a coherent reason, even if that reason feels small. And sometimes the most disturbing cases are the ones where the motive is small, because it forces you to confront something uncomfortable. That life-altering decisions can come from very ordinary arguments. And she has channeled that grief into something purposeful, using Walana's story to push for greater awareness around domestic violence, controlling relationships, and the warning signs that people around someone in danger sometimes miss. Prosecutors argued that Wright had opportunities to leave the situation before it escalated from whatever argument or moment led to that decision. He had money, options, and even his own daughter in that house, yet he still made a decision that cost a life. The jury saw that clearly. The judge handed down what the law required, and now, for the rest of his natural life, Justin Wright will sit in an Iowa correctional facility and consider whether $70 was worth it.